Hello, everyone. Um, this is a first, obviously. I hope you're all staying well and healthy. This is our first CSO dialogue entirely online. My name is Pablo Angulo Troconis, and I'm a Peace and Security Officer at the World Federation of United Nations Association. And I wish to welcome you to what is now our 25th overall CSO dialogue and our fourth in 2020. And our first one entirely online. So we're very, very excited to have His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Jose Singer. We really thank him for and his team for participating. As you may already know, the Security Council has largely moved to VTC meetings. And as I said, this is a first for WFUNA. So I will go a little bit on, I'll mention a few remarks and also some housekeeping remarks, and then give the floor to the ambassador to talk about the program of work and also Dominican Republic's experience as president of the Council for April. So Dominican Republic will hold two signature events. First, an open VTC on the 21st of April titled Protection of Civilians in Armed Conflict, Protecting Civilians from conflict-induced hunger. And second, another open VTC on the 27th of April titled Maintenance of International Peace and Security, Youth Peace and Security. These are a few of the examples of events lined up for April, and they're visible in the program of work. You can actually access the program of work under the handouts section of your dashboard for GoToWebinar. So if you click on the handout section, you'll see the program of work uploaded there. So Ambassador, we thank you and your team for your time and effort to engage and support the work of civil society by participating, and particularly in these challenging times. Transparency and accountability in the work of the Security Council is essential more than ever. But before giving you the floor, housekeeping reminders for today. Interaction should focus on the work of the Security Council. We wish to replicate the format of the CSO dialogues as much as possible when they're held in person. So we want to give opportunity to CSO colleagues to raise their questions instead of us reading the questions. So initially, as you can see, the ambassador's camera is on and my camera is on. Everybody else is muted. But when your time comes, my colleague Harmeed will enable your microphone. We have had to make some adjustments as well. We'll have before we wanted to have the webcams on, but as we test things out, the platform also doesn't allow us to have an unlimited number of presenters at the same time. So this means that when you are unable to ask your question, we will only be able to hear you, but unfortunately, we will not be able to see you. So we will give obviously a few minutes. We will let you know a few minutes before it is your time to speak. So pay attention to the chat section below. This is how my colleague will contact you to let you know that soon is your time to speak. We're recording this event, and it will also be uploaded as usual on our website afterwards. We're also live tweeting, so as usual, you can tweet your questions using the hashtag, our brand hashtag, UNSC Press. We will try to source these questions, and they will be allowed. They will be part of the questions in the lineup of questions if time allows. Again, as you know, we'll start with pre-submitted questions. If we do have time at the end to request the floor, please raise your hand and you will be given the floor. Again, please note that this is only valid in the instance that we are able to take questions from the floor. As I've said a couple of times already, this is the first time we're doing the CSO dialogues online. So if we run into any technical difficulties, please be patient with us as we try to resolve them as soon as we can. Ambassador, a warm welcome to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Above all, we pray for everybody's safety and challenging time, and for you and your family. Above all, be safe. And as you said, first, but it's also a first that the Security Council is being run from the Dominican Republic directly, and not from New York. So it's a history in the making. We're part of that, the whole United Nations, and this is what it is happening. Before I read my statement, just want to highlight 4 points so we understand the focus of the whole conversation. Meetings of the Security Councils are informal because the Security Council could not reach an unanimous decision for them to be formal. Our presidency main objective is, since it's informal, is to leave a trail of information so big of what happened in April that assure us that it becomes part of UN Security Council history. Number 3, we will achieve this by being as transparent and engaged as we can and at the same time fulfill our obligations as President of the Council. As an example, civil society members will receive from our team a weekly report on the work of the Security Council. COVID-19. I know that many questions will evolve around the pandemic. No one knows the extent of how much damage it will cause, but I can assure you this will complicate even more the situation in the field. Now I go to my statement. Thank you all for being here today. Before I share with you the details of the plans for this month, allow me to briefly comment on the working method that we are implementing during our presidency. First and foremost, it is important to note that the Council is continuing its work. We are working with all Council members to continue the discussion on its agenda, despite the extraordinary circumstances that we are facing. In order to do that, it is clear the Council needed to adapt. Since mid-March, as you all know, the Council has held private VTCs. Now, under the presidency of the Dominican Republic, it is holding both open and closed VTCs, contained in the formal plan of VTCs of the Security Council. The open VTC will substitute the usual briefings to the Council, while the closed VTCs will substitute the closed consultations. Let me explain further the open VTC. The open VTC will include a live feed of the section where the briefers present their reports. Upon conclusion of their report, the live feed will be terminated. However, the statements of the Council members in the remainder of the open VTC will be circulated by the President of the Council in a compiled document to all UN membership as a document of the Council. We are also planning to continue the practice during the Chinese President to adopt press elements or press statements after each meeting. Why can only the briefers be in webcast and live webcast? Because the technology is not allowed yet, okay? SCAD is working on it, and then maybe we can make it happen. I hope this month. The objective behind all these arrangements is to make our work transparent and as inclusive as possible. Now, let me share with you the main elements of our informal plan of VTCs of the Security Council for the month of April. On April 7th, we held VTC meeting both open and closed on the major developments in Mali, including the implementation of the agreement on peace and coordination, cooperation, and security processes, implementation of the MINUSMA's adoption plan, and potentially the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in Mali and Sahel. SRSG and head of MINUSMA and Adib briefed the Council, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali, Mr. Dramé, also briefed us. This morning, April 8th, we held a closed VTC on Libya, specifically the launching by the European Union of the new Operation Irini in the Mediterranean. The briefers from DPPA and European members of the Council spoke about its mandate and parameters, including the geographic focus. On April 9th, tomorrow, a MINURSO private meeting will take place to address the recent activities in Western Sahara. The SRSG head of MINURSO, Colin Stewart, will brief the Council on the most recent developments on the ground. Also on Thursday, we will host a closed VTC on the impact of COVID-19. On the issue that fall under Secretary Council mandate, with the Secretary General as the brief. On the 14th, we will focus on Colombia. During this session, the Security Council will receive information of the latest 90-day report from the Secretary General on the UN verification mission in Colombia and the most recent developments by the Special Envoy of the Secretary General, Carlos Ruiz Massieu. On the 15th, the High Representative on Disarmament Affairs, Izumi Nakamitsu, will brief the Council on the monthly report from the Director General of the Weapons and Prohibition of Chemicals regarding the progress and the elimination of Syrian chemical weapon program. Activities carried out by the Technical Secretariat with respect to Syria, progress achieved by the Declaration Assessment Team, as well as the activities and updates of current investigations by the fact-finding mission. Moreover, the Council is expecting early this month the first report of the Identification and Investigation Team of the OPCW on the work done thus far to identify the perpetrators of the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian Arab Republic. The members of the Council will discuss its findings if the report is issued on the expected date. On April 16, we will discuss Yemen. This conflict has evolved into the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world, with over 80% of the population needing some form of humanitarian aid. In response to the Secretary General's call for global cessation of hostilities and the positive public response from both parties, they were planning to meet under the Special Envoy auspices to discuss this escalation. Unfortunately, the recent escalation of violence is jeopardizing these discussions. In addition, the potential impact of COVID-19 is being carefully assessed in this already difficult context. On Monday, the 20th, a meeting is scheduled to discuss the AU-UN hybrid mission in Darfur, UNAMID. This meeting was on the agenda of March 2020, but due to COVID-19 emergency, it was postponed. The context of the meeting will be the SG's report on the follow-on mission. It is expected that the meeting will focus on the protection of civilians, political developments, humanitarian situation, accountability issues, and human rights. But it will especially highlight the existing and potential risks on the ground related to the drawdown and the further exit of the mission from Darfur. Also, it is possible that questions arise on the options for the post-UNAMID scenario. Usually, USG Bintu Keita briefs the Council on UNAMID from the Secretary, and Sudan participates on the Route 37. On the 21st, a meeting regarding the maintenance of international peace and security entitled Protecting Civilians from Conflict-Induced Hunger will be held via BTC. This is one of the President's featured events. Many of you are on the front lines of this issue as humanitarian organizations, and it is so important with the job you do. Our main objective with this event is to keep the issue alive in the Council and to find ways to better implement Resolution 2417 adopted 2 years ago. The briefing will also coincide with the launch of the Global Report on Food Crisis, where it will be clear that conflict continues to be one of the major drivers of food insecurity, hunger, and famine. We have a line of briefings that really honor us. FAO's Director General, WFP's Executive Director David Beasley, and NRC Secretary General Jen England. We hope to adopt a PRSD after this meeting. On April 22nd, we will have a BTC on the Great Lakes region, which will review the Secretary General's report on the situation in the region and the implementation of the Peace, Security, and Cooperation Framework for the Democratic Republic of Congo in the region. The special envoy is expected to present it and be available to provide answers to any outstanding questions. April 23rd and 24th, we will hold an open debate on the Middle East as well as a meeting on the United Nations mission in Kosovo. The conflict between Israel and Palestine, with its undeniable regional ramifications, continues to deepen threats to international peace and security as division in the Council. During this event, it's expected that members continue to promote a negotiated solution based on mutual respect and international agreed commitments. There is an opportunity, an opening that has happened with the COVID-19, that Israeli and Palestine authorities are very close in conversations on how to handle this best. We just hope that this is an opportunity to further talks on issues that have been pending for so many years. Regarding Kosovo, the Council will hold its first periodic briefing of the year on the situation of Kosovo. The special representative and head of the UN Internet mission in Kosovo, Mr. Said Tanin, will be the main briefer. The final week of our presidency on April 27th, we'll hold another feature event as an open debate on youth, peace, and security. It will focus on the accelerating the implementation of the YPS agenda in light of the 5th anniversary of the Resolution 2050. The Security Council will be briefed by 2 young peace builders, as well as by the Secretary General's envoys on youth, and are still pending the confirmation that the Secretary General will participate. The first report of the UN Secretary General on WPS was issued in March, reaffirming that the agenda is a central component in supporting national and regional efforts towards peace, and awareness still needs to be translated into concrete actions to ensure that all actors can deliver on the pillars of Resolution 2419 and 2050. Therefore, the objective of the open debate is to provide a platform of discussion for member states to take stock on progress made regarding the implementation of these resolutions, and to share the best practices and lessons learned at the national and regional level, as well as to discuss recommendations and priorities for actions in this respect. On the 28th, we will focus on UNIFSA, Sudan, and South Sudan. It will be an update on the current status of political progress between Sudan and South Sudan and other stakeholders, and to resolve the ABA dispute, as well as progress on UNIFSA implementing its mandate. The context of the meeting will be UNIFSA report, which is due from the Secretary on April 15th. The meeting will also set the stage for renewal of the UNIFSA mandate, which will take place before May 15th. Typically, USG LaCroix briefs for the Secretary. Usually, Sudan and South Sudan address the Council under Rule 37. In May 2020, the mandate of the United States Mission Navi Sudan expires. It is expected that the discussion will assess the progress of both countries, benchmarks, and the Secretary General eventual departure from the mission. We will also focus on the reduction of troops, the increase of police contingent, and the SG proposal for the inclusion of the civilian elements in the mission, specifically the appointment of a civilian representative as an alternative chief of mission. We would also consider the fragile political situation both in Sudan and South Sudan, as well as its effects in Africa. It is expected that the Council will encourage parties to redouble efforts to comply with the benchmarks established by the SG, especially those related to pending border disputes, and will recommend an update of the implementation of these benchmarks by both states. Finally, on April 29th, we conclude with a whole day dedicated to Syria. We will have an open BTC on the political situation in the morning. During this briefing, we expect to hear from Special Envoy Pedersen about the different actions he has taken with both the parties in order to mobilize the committee, agree on an agenda, and convene for the near future. Of course, the issue of national ceasefire will also be most likely addressed, as well as the situation on the COVID-19 pandemic. It's impacting both humanitarian and political situation in a country devastated by almost 10 years of conflict. In the afternoon, we will hold an open BTC on the humanitarian situation in Syria, one which I know or many of you are involved in. During this briefing, it is expected that we will continue to monitor the situation developing in the country with COVID-19. In the Syrian context, this is so critical. With overcrowded IPD camps and shelters, detention facilities, and other being under any possible international standard, the impact of the pandemic is overwhelming, and it looks like a perfect storm. The cross-border operation towards the Northwest is critical to save the lives of millions, but can also expect more information on the response to the pandemic in the Northeast, where, as you know, the UN has very limited access. With that, I conclude, and I'm ready for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that thorough overview of the program of work and particularly Dominican Republic's priorities for the month. So, as mentioned initially, we'll begin with pre-submitted questions online, just so that everybody knows. We have close to 100 people connected online, and we have received 22 questions so far. So if you can keep your questions brief and succinct when you're given the floor, we would really appreciate it. So we have a number of questions on COVID-19 and different angles to those questions. So we will start with those first, and then we move to country-specific questions and close with thematic questions. So we'll take questions in rounds of 3. I'm going to name the people for this particular round so that they are ready. David Andres Viñas from Save the Children, Robert Hansen from FES, Sami Saloom from Crisis Action. So we will start with David Andres Viñas from Save the Children.
Embajador, yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to meet with us today, especially I'm sure you're really busy with the presidency. So just to stick to the question, I just wanted to get your views on what you think the role of the Security Council could be in addressing COVID-19 crisis. I'm sure you've seen like reporting in the media criticizing the lack of a united voice on this issue, and we understand there'll be like this briefing tomorrow of the SG, which you might have mentioned in the beginning, but I was a little bit late, so apologies for that. Like what we can expect in this briefing, and we a bit disappointed that it's closed a briefing, not open, and your views as well on these 2 draft resolutions that are being discussed, one from Tunisia for the E10 and one from France. And yeah, prospects of having a resolution strongly supporting the global ceasefire call of the SG and encouraging humanitarian access throughout the world in the context of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker, Robert Hansen.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for this briefing, and I hope everyone is healthy. Yes, regarding the COVID-19 outbreak, it's the first time in general that the Council is forced to adapt its working methods, for example, by holding its meeting online. With those changes, the window of opportunity for more transparency seems to be wider than ever. So, and as we know, transparency implies openness, communication, accountability, and probably the most important point, it can lead the way to a common understanding. In this regard, Mr. President, I'd like to ask you, how do you want to achieve a much more transparent Security Council? And how do you want to convince those voices who might be skeptical about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And next is Sami Saloom, Crisis Action.
Your Excellency, thank you so much, and WFUNA as well, for the great opportunity despite all the challenges we're facing these days. You made this meeting happen, so thank you so much. My question is in follow-up to the first question on the Security Council. As we all know, the Secretary General has called for a global ceasefire to allow nations to tackle the unprecedented global threat from COVID-19. This call so far has been backed by more than 53 member states, yet despite bearing the primary responsibility for maintenance, international peace and security, the Security Council has yet to take up the demand for global ceasefire. Your Excellency, how does the Council and the E10 in particular, under your presidency, plan to support the SG's push for the global ceasefire? Can you share, please, with us what is delaying the Security Council from taking action? Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. So those are the 3 questions for this round. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the questions. Very interesting. What is the role of Security Council addressing this this COVID-19? It is so important that the Security Council addresses this. But as you know, everything takes time in the Security Council. We need 50 nations to agree to hold a meeting. Okay, we are holding this meeting for the first time, and since it's such a, for us, it's the most important theme of the last 100 years. You know, even more than the World War II. This is such a dangerous, this pandemic. It affects everything that can be our livelihoods, the way we live, everything. So, but Security Council, as you know, once you go into it, there's a lot of politics involved in everything. We have arranged in the Dominican presidency to hold a meeting with the SG. It was an unanimous decision by the Security Council to hold this meeting. So we're getting started, okay? As far as the resolutions, on that, we have not agreed on a possible product. I warn you, that also will take time. You know, as you well said, France is working on one, Tunisia is working on another one. It will take time. Remember, with Ebola, I think it took 1.5 years, something like that. Those are reality. It's I wish this could make it happen. I wish the president could make it happen, but these things take time. So there's a lot of things involved in this. And the global ceasefire, I don't think there's a more important plea that what the Secretary General made on this. You know, we should be fighting COVID. We should not be fighting our, you know, in all these conflicts that are there. They should all stop, and they should stop now. The biggest war in our generation in the last 100 years is about COVID-19 and this pandemic. You know, what will it take for nations to understand that? But, you know, the reality is that they keep fighting, and we, you know, and everywhere it's the same, more or less, the situation, though it's very hard to control. You must understand that with all the power of the Security Council, in places like Yemen, that we all agree, we're all on board. You know, Yemeni people have to put on their own. There are situations that are, Security Council doesn't have power like to snap its fingers and change things. You know, we have enough problems, and even where we agree, it's not that easy. Okay. On the transparency, well, I announced something that was very important there. For us, that's very important because that's what it's going to help the Dominican presidency leave a trail. And that's what, as I made reference at the beginning of my notes, you know, it is so important since these meetings are informal. We couldn't agree to make it formal. We would wish so, but it is what it is, and we would have to make the best of the situation you have in hand. And the best way to make this is to be as engaged as possible. You know, the council is going to work very hard. We have a full program. We imbalanced a little bit our program because since the Secretary General, when he closed the UN, first said that we were open on the 13th, most of the heavy part of our program starts on the 13th. So, you know, the first 10 days, 12 days like that, it's not a full program. But we will have a full program under the conditions that allow us to have it. You know, right now, VTC is the only way to have it. We're happy to have it. You know, we are very happy to have it. We would love to be the formal. It's not formal. We adapt. It's informal, but you know, we are making it happen and being transparent. And as I said at the beginning, civil society will get a weekly report from my team on everything that happened. Okay, and then we come on the global. The question on E10. I represent the 15 nations. You know, I don't represent D10. I don't represent P5s. I represent, as President of Council, the 15 nations involved. And every time we have a problem, and you know, I always say that we should talk as one body, and that's the way it is. You know, I know the reality a lot of times is something else, but I only work for Council of Unity and try it, and that's why we're putting out their press elements every time we agree on things, and people, you know, all ambassadors really care for this. Believe me. Really, we are in a situation like never before we've been, you know. So I really believe that everybody's making as much as they can to be transparent. We can't handle every issue, but that's how this world is made, you know. So that's our reality. The Security Council is a reflection of the world. It can't be more than that. Maybe it should be another way, but it is what it is, as I said before. You know, I'm a pragmatic as far as that. And I hope I answered more or less the questions.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have in this next round, I'm again going to name the three people that will ask questions. Winifred Doherty from the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd, Marco Sanchez from UNA USA, and Adam Carroll, Justice for All Burma Task Force. So now it is Winifred's turn to ask her question. Go ahead.
Good evening to everybody, and thank you very much, Ambassador, for your willingness to engage with civil society. My question might be a repetition of what has already been said, but I think it's important to look for what do you think might be the concrete steps and actions that the Security Council could take to enforce the plea of the Secretary General calling for an immediate ceasefire in all corners of the world, and that together we focus on the true fight of our lives, which is COVID-19. So again, what are the concrete steps and actions, and recognizing your willingness to engage with the Security Council and to have unity there? Thank you.
Thank you, Winifred, for that question. Now, Marco Sanchez from UNAUSA.
Gracias, Embajador. As the Department of Peace Operations reviews all troop and police rotations scheduled over the coming months due to the rising threat of COVID-19, how will the UN Security Council work to ensure that peace and diplomacy remains a priority in vulnerable regions around the world? Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, for that question. Now, Adam Carroll, Justice for All Burma Task Force. Adam, maybe his audio is not working.
It looks like, hello, Ambassador, thank you for your time. This is Hermit. It looks like Adam's connectivity is low, so I will ask the question on his behalf. His question is, the coronavirus will have a disastrous impact on vulnerable communities, including refugees, such as the Rohingya, displaced Syrians, and the Palestinians, so many of whom are in tightly crowded camps. Social distancing is not possible, and medical equipment is seriously lacking. Will the Council hold an open session to focus on this aspect of the current crisis? Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador, back to you. You have the floor.
Okay, concrete steps for a global ceasefire. That is a very, very challenging question to answer directly, okay? We have since I'm speaking as President of the Council, I can only speak as President of the Council. We have not laid out a plan, but more or less, you know, the Secretary General has called for a ceasefire, right? COVID-19 is becoming to all countries in common reality. Okay, let's talk about what it is. This is a real time for peace and unity. As I said before, the only war that we must be fighting is the war against COVID. But if we can't silence conflict, you know, we have to address both of them. You know, women are are under pressure with this, you know, the lockdown and gender violence, it exacerbates everything that we already have problems that we haven't been able to solve for years in so many different places, okay? We have the situation, and now we have COVID. As I said before, you know, it's brewing like the perfect storm. So I pray to God really that a cure is found or a vaccine to this, because this is going to complicate so much everything that is happening. And you know, already we had so many difficult politics involved, everything involved climate change, you know, women, sexual violence against women, everything that you can find in the book that you all, since you're all in the field, you know better than anybody else. And now we have this. So give you a perfect answer to that. It is so impossible, you know. But my plea, and I do make this plea to all of you, is that we all should be only fighting into the COVID-19 and listen, and you know, conflicts in nature should be listening to the Secretary General. Peace and diplomacy, how does that, we keep it as the foremost problem in which we're dealing with, and which is our mandates in the Security Council. It's more or less the same, in the same line of answer as the first question, you know? We need this ceasefire to address COVID, because COVID, you know, it has paralyzed nations. And you've seen that the whole world is closed down. How do we address and go directly? And also, more than that, the first plea of the Secretary General was that this COVID-19 should be addressed from a global perspective. Is that happening? You know, are they listening to what he said? You know, it should be addressed globally. So now you have nations fighting for medical equipment and this and that. That's not the way it should be addressed. It will make it harder, because this is a connected world. There's not, you know, if the Dominican Republic, which we're under the same conditions as the rest of the world, let's say we solved our problem, we're still in the same boat, because, you know, we depend on tourism. Let's say a European country has so many little deaths that goes back to work. How long will it last if countries around them do not solve this problem? This is a global issue. It has to be addressed globally. It cannot be addressed individually. Let's not kid ourselves. And the last question in coronavirus, again, that's the open question for all of us, you know. I wish I did have that answer, you know. It is the question of our lifetimes, you know, and it will be. And I don't know, we saw Bill Gates' session yesterday. Well, he said that even the best case scenario, it would probably go into fall of 2021 in the United States, which is the most powerful nation in the world. So this is a problem we have to learn to live with it, you know, and more the people that are elderly and people that have medical conditions. It's a huge challenge for the world, you know. I hope I more or less answered what you want to hear. Really, there's so many questions and there's so many open answers that I wish I did have something that would give somebody peace as president of the council, but we're on the same boat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. So in this round of questions, and also recognizing that you have to leave at 5:30, so we have our last question on COVID-19, and then we'll move to country-specific questions. The first person is Maria Marshishin. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, from the University of Toronto. Then we'll move to country-specific questions on Venezuela, Beatriz Borges from CEPAS, and then on Colombia, Mavich Cabrera Baeza. So first person to go is Maria Marshishin.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Thank you so much for this briefing. My question has to do whether you foresee this COVID-19 pandemic becoming a global security threat, possibly fueled by the scarcity of medical equipment or essential goods. We know a lot about the vulnerabilities in the poor states and where the conflict states, but we see more and more the economic and political tensions that are coming up over these medical equipment scarcity and essential supplies such as food. So I would really like to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Now on Venezuela, we move on to Venezuela. Beatriz Borges from CEPAS.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Thank you for this opportunity. I know it's a global issue about the COVID, but Venezuela lived one of the worst humanitarian emergencies in the world. The Secretary General declared last April that there are 7 million in 2019. There are 7 million in humanitarian need, and the evaluation of the World Food Program estimate more than 32% of the population is in elementary risk, and show how the crisis is worsened. And now more for the COVID-19 is a tragedy after another. Why is a crisis like this not on the agenda of the Security Council, and what will the Dominican Republic do about this serious problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Beatriz. And final person is Mavich Cabrera Ballesa.
Hi, good afternoon, Ambassador. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. And thank you also to WFUNA for organizing this important conversation. On Colombia, Ambassador, can you please let us know what is the status of the UN verification mission in Colombia amidst the COVID-19 crisis? Because we're very concerned that while it may not be specifically on their mandate, the presence of the UN verification mission there also contributes to, drawing attention to the human rights violations, especially against civil society activists and peace activists. The second question is, I know we've spoken about the global ceasefire, a call for a global ceasefire, but the Colombia is unique in the sense that the ceasefire call came from the ELN, or Ejército Liberación Nacional, which is not recognized by the current government. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador, back to you.
COVID global security threat. Without a doubt, it's the biggest security threat that the world has faced up to now since the 1918 pandemic. I mean, there's not, World War II was a horrible war. Millions of people died. But this can become, time will tell. Time will tell. The more time passes, the more damage we'll do. The more damage we'll do to people, to the economy, because governments can only help for such a long period of time. Maybe 30 seconds. Most powerful nations have more time, more money. They can, but if developing countries do not have that money. They don't have that access to credit. There's a liquidity crisis right now. From what I read a report, I shouldn't say that because I haven't confirmed that. From a bank, there was a liquidity crisis in the world right now, and that's going to raise interest rates eventually for developing nations. Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. So it is by far such a security threat like no other that we have faced, because it's multifaceted. It affects every aspect of our normal lives. You understand? So eventually, we're starting to engage the Security Council on this. We're starting to engage. And once we are starting that meeting tomorrow afternoon, that I think the question was asked, why is it closed and not open? Well, that was the decision of the council. I can't have it open if there's no unanimous decision. And that was, it's a start. SG will give us a briefing. And he will give a briefing on his call for a cessation of conflict, and it's tied up to that. So we can all fight the same war. A war to be fought is, I said, repeat it, and I will repeat it as many times as is the war against COVID. Venezuela, a country so dear to Dominicans. For us now, it's become a total humanitarian problem. Whatever the reasons, it's not for me as the president of the Security Council to judge. We do believe that we as Dominicans, we all try to look for a political solution. We spent 10 months trying to make agreements for that elections to be held with all parties involved. It didn't happen. We spent 10 months, many hours in this country. Venezuelans are very, very dear people to Dominicans for such a long history. But the reality is now it's a big humanitarian problem, which any side can pick what are the reasons, but it is there. And we must help them. We must help this humanitarian problem in Venezuela. And they had it before COVID. Imagine now with COVID. Our hearts have to be open to Venezuelans. That's my position. Another country that was very dear to the Dominican Republic, Colombia. In this, the Council is totally united on what the Colombian government is doing. We're totally united on this. But I will say one thing. On our visit, the Council visited Colombia, and we met President Duque, we met civil society, which is an incredible group of people there. They're so prepared, and we were so impressed from their thoughts and our conversations with them. That were, they really inspired us, I'll tell you the truth. The reality is, first, we have to solve these coca fields. There's transactional crime. Transactional crime becomes the biggest problem in that country to reach total peace. So you have to fight that. Let me tell you, the Indonesian ambassador told me an anecdote when we were there in Colombia in that trip from the Security Council. He says, I said, Jose, we had the same problem. You know what? With the coke fields all over Indonesia. You know how we solved it? We had a tsunami. And after the tsunami creates so much destruction that everybody got together and said, let's solve this problem first. And look at Indonesia, what a great country it is. They solved that, but they united. So the Colombian people have to get united to get rid of the coke fields. And from there, they will get rid of the transactional crime that revolves around that. And that it's what it has not made possible, that total peace that Colombians want so bad.
Thank you, Ambassador. Okay, so the next round, in this round, given a limited time, I'm going to add another person. So four questions for this round. So we have on Syria, we have Lou Charbonneau from Human Rights Watch first. Then on Afghanistan, we have Hila Yoon from the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. Then we move on to thematic questions. We have 2 questions on WPS, Vanessa Jackson from CUR International, and then also on WPS, Heather Ibrahim Letters from Global Fund for Widows. So we start with Lou Charbonneau from Human Rights Watch.
Thank you. My question relates to something that you mentioned, Ambassador, and thanks for doing this briefing for us. You said that the new OPCW report on Syria will be discussed by the Council. So I wanted to ask you, what, if any, steps will the Security Council take to ensure accountability for chemical weapons attacks by Syrian government forces in light of the attribution report the OPCW released today, making clear that it was the Syrian military that was responsible at the highest levels, it said. Also, what steps can the Council take for ensuring accountability for deliberate attacks on hospitals by Syrian and Russian forces, which have reduced the ability of Syrians in those areas to treat sick and wounded people, which is particularly dangerous amidst the COVID-19 outbreak. And I'm aware of the certain parties on the council that don't like accountability steps, particularly in relation to Syria, but at least what can the council do to highlight these issues, even if no actual practical steps can be taken?
Thank you very much. Next is Hela Yoon, Global Network of Women Peace Builders. She may be having some issues connecting. Oh, no, I see that the microphone is on. Hela, can you talk now?
Thank you, Ambassador, for briefing us today. So my question is, how can the UN peacekeeping mission in Afghanistan ensure the inclusion and protection of Afghan women, youth, and vulnerable minorities in the current peace process that is going on with the Taliban? And my second question is, what measures are taken by the UN Security Council and its members to ensure that Afghanistan will not become a safe haven for terrorists if the United States withdraw all of its troops from Afghanistan after the peace agreement is signed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to thematic questions. WPS, Vanessa Jackson from CARE International.
Thanks, WFUNA, and thanks also, Ambassador, for the chance to talk about what's happening this month. My question really relates to, I know that for many reasons you had to make the tough decision to shift the open debate on sexual violence in conflict this month. And we're hopefully going to be able to have that in July. But I just wondered if you are able to outline whether you know whether there will be any women civil society briefers on the issue of women, peace and security, or are you looking at alternative informal ways to make sure women and girls' voices are loud and clear in the council this month? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And final question on this round, Heather Ibrahim Leathers, Global Fund for Widows, also in WPS.
Thank you, Ambassador, for taking the time to address our questions. I'm glad that everyone is safe, and thank you, Pablo, for moving mountains to make this happen. Ambassador, my question is, according to the United States Department of State, 80% of the female population in Syria is widowed, and it is the same in other conflict situations. Conflict is also the cause of the half-widow, or wives of the disappeared, and also the child widow, who is usually a victim of forced marriage and abduction. Conflict widows have no rights to property or assets, leaving their daughters vulnerable to child marriage and human trafficking, and their sons susceptible to extremist recruitment or child soldiers. What is the Security Council's plan to ensure that widows receive the legal and policy protections they and their children need? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, back to you.
You all ask questions that are really dear to us. You know, Syria is discussed in the council 3 times a month. We have our expert in Syria, Joan Sedano, who's also our art, and it's, you know, her heart is, you know, in every speech. And if you hear our statements in the Dominican Republic, we're very, very engaged. But as Security Council President, this is a discussion, you know, it's just so unacceptable, attacking civilians in hospitals. How can you justify there were in Idlib, there's 3 million people. Let's say there's 30,000 terrorists, whatever you want to call it. Does that justify an attack with bombs, bomb the civilians to be able to get rid of the 30,000 terrorists? In no way. In no way. But as you know, there's not council unity in this theme. So when there's no council unity, it's very hard for the Security Council to move. So we keep bringing the subject up, we keep bringing the subject up, we keep insisting, and we keep hammering and hammering, because at the end, it's such a great humanitarian problem. You know, and if the political agenda with the constitutional reforms that would move ahead a little bit, maybe we could start and stop the bombings against civilians and stuff like that. You know, this is a contentious issue. It's a shameful issue for the world, what's happening in Syria. And then, so my fourth question, you know, on the 80% women that are widow, and how many kids don't have a father? It is such a tragic situation for the world, you know. To tell the truth, it's an embarrassment that there hasn't been a solution. But you know, it's like any other conflict, and that's probably one of the worst situations. It's the political differences in many parties, too many players involved, while humanitarian problem is suffering, and human beings have been killed, and human beings have to be fed, and human beings are not eating, and kids aren't going to school. It's a really tragic situation. Afghanistan youth and women. What a challenge for the world, that too. Well, the U.S. has tried to make a peace plan, and we have to congratulate the United States. But it's at the end, you know, all these conflicts, it's, you know, as much as the world help, as much as they put their heart in, the nations that can put money in, give, you know, it's your own people that have to take the front in this thing, you know, and confront this. You know, the world, the Security Council cannot solve problems, it can facilitate the solution of problems, but it's its own people that have to fight for the things they believe. So, of course, we are not going to leave them alone in the Security Council. We're watching it very close, you know, but it is difficult. It's difficult. And I hope the Taliban understand that, you know, they should go into a democratic system, and if they win an election, they win an election. You know, they should be part of the political process, which is what happened in Colombia. That's the perfect example of what should happen in other situations, where both parties go through the political process and you fight through the political process. And as far as the final question, the sexual debate, you know, that's another issue that's very dear to the Dominican Republic. But under these conditions, we had 3 big events. We were going to let go of it, and we found a country that has the same thoughts that we have. So we have Germany, which is an excellent country to hold this meeting on these issues. And of course, there's going to be women briefings, you know. German ambassador and I compete on that, you know, who defends more women, in which country defends more the women's rights and women's imbalance, you know, and this team will be in very, very good hands with Germany. I hope you know, maybe I didn't answer to the point a lot of your questions, but I think the general feeling in that is that, you know, we're working, and we really believe, no matter what side the ambassadors are, you know, the 15 ambassadors, the other 14 ambassadors, I know them well, you know, they're trying. We are trying. It's not that easy to solve problems, you know. It looks easy, you know, but it's not that easy, you know. So all I can say is I thank you for this. I encourage civil society guys to work first-hand information. When the Security Council travels, one of the most important meetings, in Mali, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Colombia, I've been to Ethiopia, you know, I've been to South Sudan. The South Sudan civil society meeting was impressive. We even canceled one event, going in the field where the presence of the UN was, just to follow up on them. It was impressive. And that trip was co-hosted by the United States and South Africa. It it was impressive, you know, how committed they are. And, you know, we got somewhere in South Sudan after that visit. You know, we thank both leaders for this, you know, but all these issues are, you know, Security Council is criticized. I'm in there, and we have reasons to be criticized, but you have to be in there to understand that it's not that easy to peel that apple, okay? But let me guarantee you, those 14 other ambassadors, myself, we really try hard, okay? So I do thank you all for this, and we're open. For civil society, we're a great believer of what the work you do, and we're open. My team is open to you. We'll give you that weekly report, and transparency, engagement under these conditions, it is so important. And I'm going to work this team is going to work till the last day to give that to the public, okay? The United States. So thank you very much to all, and really keep safe, you and your families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for furthering, and thank you to you and your team for furthering transparency and accountability of the Security Council for participating, particularly during these challenging times. Thank you to the civil society organizations that also participated, and apologies to the ones that we couldn't get to for their questions. This is a first, as we said, so we hoped it was useful, a fruitful conversation. If you have any feedback, please do reach out to us. We want to learn how to make this better and more useful to you. So thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. Thank you.